I mean, I listened to this president's speech, such as it was. Obviously, every syllable they went over, his staff went over, the campaign went over. This has actually been going on for months. It's getting worse and worse. Finally, he says something today. But what did he say? Is this guy a profile in courage? Is this one of the great speeches in American history? Was this a speech that met the moment? Was this a speech that called out the perpetrators? We understand we're a nation that believes in free speech. He doesn't. It's his attorney general that issued that memo against parents and urged all elements of the Department of Justice to monitor parents. It's his Department of Justice that goes after pro-lifers who dare to peacefully protest at abortion clinics. It's his FBI that sought to secrete itself into the Catholic churches around the country. It's his administration, as reported by independent journalists. They use virtually every agency department of the federal government to censor speech. It's his administration that created that committee on disinformation. He doesn't believe in free speech. And we, the American people, we know the difference between free speech and violence. We know the difference between free speech and riots. We've listened to Biden and his ilk in and out of the media lecture us about January 6th, day in and day out. The protesters who were on the lawn of the Capitol building, not even in the building, who broke nothing, did no damage. They're now rounding them up and prosecuting them with the support of federal judges in the District of Columbia, with the support of the media. How are they any different? They're different in a lot of ways. They love America. They're not protesting against America. The Islamo-Nazis, the Hitler Youth, and the Marxists, they hate America. Yes. So books are being thrown at people in Washington, D.C. who are doing hard time. Not so with the Hitlerians and the Marxists and the Islamists. Not so. And again, with the moral equivalency, you want to know why? Joe Biden is a moral chameleon. He has no principles other than his power and his desire for wealth. And not the good old way, through connections, through his office. So I sat there and I listened to him. This is a man who has enormous power. This is a man who can order the Department of Justice, the Civil Rights Division in the Department of Justice, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the United States Marshals, the Department of Education, the Office of Civil Rights, the Department of Homeland Security. This is a man who could have ordered all of them and more to stop the funding from Communist China, from Islamist Qatar, from the Hamas Nazi network into our country. This is a man who could have told George and Alex Soros, stop funding these organizations. Could have told his buddy Noam Chomsky, cut it out. Could have directed the federal government to investigate the billionaires who are using dark money contributions, scores of front organizations, to launder their contributions, to do what you see being done in the streets. But he didn't do any of that. He didn't do any of that. I was thinking of playing his speech for you. 4 minutes. That's not going to happen. I correctly summarized it. You want to listen to it? Go ahead. 4 minutes. One of the greatest, shortest speeches in American history was the Gettysburg Address. One of the shortest inaugural addresses was Lincoln's second inaugural address. The shortest was George Washington, who delivered it in writing to Congress. They said monumental things. They said things that are forever remembered. They said things that will go down in American history. Few words, but every one, pearls that struck a chord with Americans then and now. What did Joe Biden say today? Nothing. He did his checklist. Can't say he didn't give a speech now, but he did nothing. President of the United States attacks Make America Great Again Republicans with a vile, poisonous, cancerous language. He attacks Benjamin Netanyahu and many of his conservative cabinet members with a vile, putrid language and attacks on and off the record. He says nothing of George Soros, nothing of the foundations that are behind this. He says nothing of Qatar, where his brother Jim was in business. Nothing of the Communist Chinese and the Confucius Institutes. He treats Hamas as if they're the good guys. And Iran is celebrating all of it. Our enemies are celebrating this. The Russians, the Chinese, the North Koreans, they're celebrating. The terrorists, Iran, Nicaragua, Venezuela, Cuba, and all the rest, they're celebrating it. Biden unleashed the hell in the Middle East with his policies by funding our enemy. Biden paid for October 7th, and so did Blinken. Biden and Blinken have paid for the nuclear weapons that Iran will have after the election. Your tax dollars. I'm the only one behind a microphone who's written about this before it happened. You've read the books. Ameritopia. American Marxism. The Democrat Party hates America. They're the biggest of them all. Liberty and tyranny. You've read them. You've heard me talk about them. We knew this was here. We knew it would get worse, and it has. This fusion of Marxism and Islamism is here. Not just agitators. It's more than that. And as far as we know, the government's not doing anything about these funding sources from billionaire Democrats, from foreign governments, from terrorist regimes. Nothing. Nothing will be done with these colleges and universities to de-Stalinize them until Biden's gone and the Republicans control both houses of Congress. And even then, I wonder. Republican state legislatures with Republican governors, they're free to act. Why aren't they acting? When you go to the back of American Marxism, you will see I have a whole section on education, and within the section on education, I talk about higher education. And I explain there some of the proposals you're hearing today that a BDS movement needs to be unleashed against these colleges and universities. They're the enemy. They're the breeding grounds of Soviet-style, Islamist-style propaganda. They're brainwashing future generations. People who are supposed to support this country. And I talk there about defunding universities and colleges. And I talk there about eliminating the tenure provisions in these schools. I talk about reviewing how they spend monies, which is rarely done. The tuition that they charge us. Taxing these endowments. It's all in the book. The devouring of higher education. Then the subsidizing of it. And now under Biden, where 2/3 of the American people never graduated from a four-year college institution, are now subsidizing the 1/3 who do. That has to end. Now. I hear all the talk. What are these Republican state legislatures in red states doing? Well, Mark, most of these schools are in blue states. I got it. But what are they doing in the red states? We have excellent proposals, I must say, coming out of the Republican leadership in the House. I hear nothing in the Senate. Nothing. Zero. Joe Biden's speech today was pathetic. There was no substance. He didn't take a moral position. Most people don't run for president saying, I support anti-Semitism. But here we have a president where it's swirling around our country. And I can tell you as a Jew, we've never seen anything like this before in our history, in this country. And this is the best he can do? He's a moral chameleon. When the politics told him to support segregation and racism and to oppose the integration of our public schools, that's what he did. When the politics told him in 1994 to sponsor a law that would target our inner cities and the black community, penalties for crack over cocaine, he did it. When the politics today are with him and Blinken, using horrendous propaganda against the only Jewish state, horrendous propaganda against their prime minister, blood libels about how the Jews in the Middle East are killing the innocent Palestinians, the Jewish military is bombing them, and it's over the top. And the opposite is true. When they use Hamas statistics on civilian deaths, Biden and Blinken have poured gas on the anti-Semitism that has been bubbling up in our colleges and universities and so much of our culture. He has blood on his hands. From October 7th on the border and throughout Afghanistan. This is the best he can do? This is what he says? The media celebrated, his party celebrated? Joe Biden is you fill in the blank, and he always has been. And if he's reelected, we are a very sick people. I mean sick in terms of suicide. Sick in terms of sabotaging ourselves, destroying our future. We're a nation that won't survive.